Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're taking a deep, unhurried dive into a truly fascinating moment in history. We're looking at a time when an entire nation hit its absolute peak, the golden age of King Solomon. We're going to break down how this ancient kingdom was actually run, the people pulling the strings, the mind-boggling wealth they produced, and the legendary intellect sitting right at the center of the whole shebang. We've got some incredible historical details to unpack today, so let's get right into it.
Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today, we explain Prophets Kings 1, Chapter 4 in a clear and simple way, step by step.
Now, to really get what's going on in this chapter, we just need a tiny bit of context. We've just come out of the era of King David, right? And that was a time strictly defined by constant military survival, civil unrest, and territorial expansion. But now, David's brutal wars are finally over. Solomon has taken the throne, his rule is totally locked in, and a massive shift is happening in the narrative. We're basically moving from the battlefield to the boardroom. The kingdom is at peace, and the golden age of Israel has officially begun. All right, here's our roadmap for today. We're going straight through the chapter. First, the king's inner circle. Then, the 12 district governors. Next, peace and provisions. Fourth, Solomon's unmatched wisdom. Then we'll cover key ideas, and finally, wrap up with lessons and a recap. Section 1. The king's inner circle, Solomon's cabinet. Verse 1 kicks off simply but powerfully. So King Solomon ruled over all Israel, which immediately establishes his absolute authority. But, a great king doesn't rule completely alone. Verses 2 through 6 give us a super detailed list of his top officials in Jerusalem. Honestly, it reads a lot like a modern presidential cabinet. We've got Azariah, the son of Zadok, stepping up as the high priest. Then there's Elioreph and Ahiah. They are the scribes, basically the secretaries, handling the massive, unprecedented mountain of royal decrees and international letters. Jehoshaphat is the recorder. Benaiah, the guy who famously replaced Joab, is the commander-in-chief over the military. Azariah, son of Nathan, manages the district officers. Zabud is the chief minister and personal advisor, literally called the king's friend. Ahishar manages the huge royal household. And finally, Adoniram is put in charge of the levy, which is the forced labor force. This group right here, this is the bedrock of Solomon's centralized power. Now, what's really fascinating here is how translating these ancient titles helps us grasp just how sophisticated Solomon's government actually was. For example, the recorder wasn't just some guy in the corner taking notes. This role was much closer to a Secretary of State or a national historian, managing foreign treaties and keeping the kingdom's official annals. And that levy, managed by Adoniram, that was a massive national project of conscripted labor, absolutely crucial for building the temple and the kingdom's huge infrastructure. We're talking about thousands upon thousands of workers that required precise logistical coordination. This definitely wasn't some loose gathering of tribes. This was a highly structured, bureaucratic, ancient superpower operating at peak efficiency. Section 2. The 12 district governors, managing the realm. As we move into verses 7 through 19, the camera kind of pulls back from the capital in Jerusalem to look out over the entire nation. And it raises a big question. How do you actually feed and find a massive centralized government without completely crushing everyday people with taxes? Well, Solomon's brilliant answer was the 12 district governors. Verse 7 tells us Solomon appointed 12 officers over all of Israel, and their main job was to supply provisions for the king and his sprawling royal household. But here is the administrative genius of the whole system. Each guy had to supply provisions for just 1 month out of the year. So instead of a constant, grinding year-round tax on everyone, the burden was carefully sliced up into 12 geographical districts. A region paid the immense cost of the royal court for exactly 1 month, and then boom, they were free of that specific burden for the rest of the year. It's also super interesting that this system was tied directly to the royal family to guarantee loyalty. Verses 11 and 15 casually mention that 2 of these governors, Ben-Abinadab and Ahimaaz, were actually married to Solomon's own daughters, Tephet and Basemoth. Let's take a look at a few of these territories to truly grasp the scale here. The text lists all 12, but I want to highlight some standouts. We have Ben-Ur up in the hill country of Ephraim. We have Baanah overseeing vital, incredibly fertile areas like Ta'anach, Megiddo, and Beth-Shan. But check out Ben-Geber in Ramoth-Gilead, mentioned in verse 13. His territory included the region of Argob in Bashan, and the text specifically points out this area contains 60 large walled cities with bronze gate bars. I mean, think about the military and architectural significance of that detail. We aren't just talking about open farmland. These are heavily fortified urban centers contributing to the king's table. And down in verse 19, we see Geber. He was the sole governor over the massive, sprawling district of Gilead, which actually made up the former territories of the Amorite king Sihon and Bashan's legendary king Og. When you actually look at the primary Hebrew text here, it's pretty amazing how these meticulous lists of names and regions suddenly give way to this beautiful, sweeping description of the nation. It smoothly transitions us out of the dry bureaucracy and right into the breathtaking scale of the kingdom's prosperity. Which brings us to the actual results of all this careful organization.
Section 3. Peace, Prosperity, and Provisions. The Fruits of Good Governance.
So what did all this taxation, structure, and cabinet-level planning actually do for the everyday citizen? We're shifting from the people running the kingdom to the glorious results of their hard work. Verse 20 gives us this incredibly poetic description. Judah and Israel were many as the sand which is by the sea in multitude, eating and drinking and making merry. Just think about what a profound generational shift that is. Back in King David's time, the text was constantly talking about brutal battles, hiding out in caves, and just sheer military survival. Now, under Solomon's rule, the population has exploded into an era of unprecedented joy. Verse 21 adds that Solomon ruled over all the kingdoms from the Euphrates River to the land of the Philistines, all the way south to the border of Egypt. They brought tribute and served him his entire life. The realm was completely, undeniably secure. Now, let's look at the sheer economic reality of feeding this court. Verses 22 and 23 details Solomon's provisions for just one single day. Listen closely to this grocery list. 30 cores of fine flour, 60 cores of meal, 10 stall-fed cattle, 20 pasture-fed cattle, and 100 sheep. And by the way, that massive amount of livestock doesn't even count the deer, gazelles, roebucks, and choice-fatted fowl that were also brought in daily. All of that for just one single day of meals. To put that into perspective, we need to understand exactly what a core is. 30 cores of fine flour plus 60 cores of meal equals 90 cores of grain daily. An ancient core is roughly equal to 180 bushels. Do the math, and that means Solomon's royal kitchens were tearing through over 16,000 bushels of grain every single day. It absolutely proves the staggering wealth of the court, but it also really highlights why that 12-month governor system was totally necessary. There's literally no way a single region could support this massive daily drain all year round without collapsing. But the text makes sure to emphasize that the common people were not suffering to pay for all this royal luxury. Verse 25 says, "During Solomon's lifetime, Judah and Israel lived in safety, each man under his own vine and fig tree, from Dan even to Beersheba." This is a classic, beautiful biblical idiom for total personal economic security and profound physical safety. You have your own land, your own crops, and you know for a fact that no foreign army or corrupt official is going to come and take them from you. Dan is the extreme northern boundary, and Beersheba is the extreme southern boundary. From top to bottom, the entire realm was locked down and secure. And why exactly were they so secure? Well, verses 26 through 28 explain that. Despite the profound era of peace, Solomon maintained an immense defensive strength. The text notes he had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots, along with 12,000 horsemen. And remember those 12 district officers we learned about earlier? They made sure nothing was lacking for the military either. They brought the required quotas of barley and straw for all these tens of thousands of horses to the proper places, every man in his appointed month. So peace was meticulously maintained through overwhelming, perfectly supplied strength. Section 4. Solomon's Unmatched Wisdom, the Intellectual Golden Age. In verses 29 through 34, we transition from staggering material and military wealth to something even more valuable, God-given intellectual wealth. The text spells out the incredible scope of this intellect. It says, God gave Solomon wisdom, very great insight, and a breadth of understanding as measureless as the sand on the seashore. To put this in historical context, the text tells us his wisdom was actually greater than all the men of the East and greater than all the legendary wisdom of ancient Egypt, which, back then, was considered the absolute pinnacle of human learning. He was wiser than any other man, even surpassing specifically named legendary wise men of the time, like Ethan the Ezrahite, Heman, Calcol, and Darda. So his fame wasn't just about his money. It was a profound, internationally recognized, generation-defining brilliance. Verse 32 actually puts a hard number on this immense creative output. It tells us that Solomon spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs numbered 1,005. He was a wildly prolific composer, poet, and philosopher, completely cementing his legacy as the ultimate sage. And what's so cool is how practical this knowledge was. Verse 33 shows us his wisdom wasn't just abstract, high-level philosophy. It was highly observational and scientific. The guy was a master of the natural world. He described and taught about plant life, from the massive, towering cedar of Lebanon all the way down to the tiny hyssop weed growing out of a stone wall. He taught zoology, carefully categorizing animals, birds, reptiles, and fish. Because of this unparalleled encyclopedic knowledge, verse 34 tells us that men of all nations, sent by kings from all over the world who had caught wind of his wisdom, literally traveled across the ancient world to Jerusalem just to sit and listen to him speak.
Section 5. Key Ideas and Clarifications. Distilling the Peshat.
All right, we've walked through the entire chapter step by step. Let's summarize the simple text-based meaning, what we call the Peshat. First off, you might have noticed that this chapter focuses strictly on administrative, economic, and intellectual reality. There is very little direct theology here. Why? Well, because it's demonstrating the literal, physical fulfillment of God's promise to David, that his son would be a man of rest and peace. Plus, those long, difficult lists of names, cabinet members, and governors that we slogged through at the beginning, they are absolutely essential. They ground this golden age in concrete, historical bureaucracy rather than just some vague, mythical storytelling. It proves that this era of peace was built on real, functioning organization.
Finally, what practical life lessons can we pull from this ancient text to improve ourselves today? Number 1, the power of delegation. Solomon didn't try to micromanage the entire food supply of the nation himself, right? He created a brilliant system that shared the burden evenly across 12 regions. Number 2, value wisdom. The kings of the earth didn't travel all the way to Jerusalem just for the gold. They came to hear the wisdom of a man who studied everything from human nature to the fish of the sea. Knowledge is a profound asset. And number 3, order creates peace. The everyday people were able to sit happily under their vines and fig trees specifically because the government was well administered. Chaos breeds anxiety, but order creates safety. So, I'll leave you with this provocative question to chew on. Are you building your own life, your household, or your business with structured wisdom and order, or are you just leaving your peace and security completely to chance?
Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.